I know you're extremely frustrated with the state of your health, and I am too. But there's a reason why you're sick, and the truth is, there's a system in place that prevents you from learning the truth about how to get healthy. And I know it sounds tinfoil hatty, but bear with me. I promise we're gonna get some information that you wish you knew a very long time ago. Now, if you can put on your tinfoil hat with me just to indulge this conversation topic, we're going to take a ride through history to learn the information about your health and healing that has been hidden from you intentionally. And by the time you finish this, you're going to learn and you'll know when and why the healthcare model changed from herbs and natural things that were working quite well in many cases to petroleum-based drugs. You'll know what standard of care, I use air quotes, standard of care actually means, and you're going to know what it means when doctors use it. You're also going to learn a new language of your body to help interpret your root causes and why you're getting sick. And we're going to debunk the lies that IBD is a permanent condition, because it is not. We've proven it. We just need the world to catch up. Now, if you're new here, my name is Josh Deck. I'm an IBD specialist, medical lecturer, and physician's consultant for Crohn's and colitis and severe IBS. And my team and I have helped hundreds of people reverse their IBD by figuring out the reason why you became inflamed in the first place. And I can tell you right now, it is never random. And in this episode, we're talking about the information around reversing IBD that's been shadow banned. That means it's been hidden by social media, but not deleted. It's just been pushed down so nobody can actually see it. So right out of the gate, let's get started by debunking everything that you think you know about IBD. You're told, number one, here's what we're gonna talk about, okay? We're told, number one, IBD is autoimmune. That's the first thing we're told. It's an unknown condition. Number two that we're told is it's just genetic. And three is we're told it's idiopathic. This means there's no known cause. These are the three foundational pillars of IBD that say it's autoimmune, there's nothing we can do, you have to be on drugs for the rest of your life. Right out of the gate, we're gonna come swinging. I'm gonna debunk this with you in like a minute and a half, okay? So hold on to your hats. Number one, IBD is autoimmune. False. Black bears. Now, the reason IBD is not autoimmune is because only about 50%, that's 40 to 60%, have any IBD antibodies at all, and other antibodies are 5, 10, 15, or 20% of the people dealing with Crohn's or colitis actually have these antibodies. Therefore, it's not autoimmune in at least 50% of people. That's number one. Number two, to say it's just genetic. Yes, there is a genetic component. That's no doubt about it. But genetics don't guarantee anything. They don't ever guarantee you get sick. It just makes you prone. For example, 5 people all stand in a room together and all have a mold infection. They all get exposed to mold. One might get Parkinson's, one might get asthma, one might get Crohn's, colitis, one gets arthritis. Maybe a 6th person gets nothing because they don't have that genetic weakness or susceptibility. So there's a genetic component, but here's one more stat for you. North America, okay, is 5% of the global population. They have 50% of these inflammatory bowel diseases. It can't possibly be genetic. That is an epidemic instead. And so the third piece I'm going to give you to back that up, we say, well, it's just genetic. It's all North Americans then. Not true. To say it's idiopathic, meaning no known cause. Go to the stats. Look at the CDC in 1990. Depending on the study you look at, there's about 2 million cases of Crohn's and colitis worldwide. Today, it's north of 7 million. Some suggestions are up to 8 million. So it's increased for upwards of 5 times the amount of bowel disease in the last 35 years. So that means there's something causing it, and it can't just be genetic to see it climb that much in just 30 years. It would take hundreds of years. So all these 3 pillars they stand on for autoimmune, IBD, genetic, nothing we can do, right out of the gate, completely shattered. Doesn't make any sense. There's no legs for it to stand on. So what I want to do now is take you guys through a little walk through history. I want you to understand something extremely important. And this is where I want you to indulge me with a little tinfoil hat moment. Everything we think we know about healthcare has changed dramatically in the last 100 years. Some for the better, 100% about it. Some for the better, but much of it for worse. So let's talk about this. I want to go back all the way to the American Civil War. I feel like I need a chair and like a couch with a pillow to sit on and talk to you guys about my lecture here. But here's what we have to look at. Let's go back to the American Civil War. It started in 1861. Now, historians suggest it should have ended by 1862. However, there was a doctor by the name of Dr. Francis Porchet, and what he did is he came out with a book. He was a pharmacist, a botanist, a medical doctor. He came out with a book called Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests. Now, this book was all about the fauna and the herbs and things that they used for health and healing at that time. This is off the back of guys like Nikola Tesla, who used sound waves and frequencies and all kinds of stuff to help break up cancer cells and help the body heal. Really amazing tech. And this document, this Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests, was used between 1861 and 1865. The war should have ended in 62, but historians suggest that this book by Dr. Francis Porchet was so effective in the herbal medicine, it extended the war double, 2 extra years, which is quite astonishing. So we've seen a lot for thousands of years. Ayurvedic medicine, a lot of Eastern medicine, Chinese medicine, even Western medicine was using herbs and natural remedies to help the body heal. So jump ahead, now 1865, the American Civil War ends. We're still using all these things out in the field in natural medicine. 1870, John D. Rockefeller founds Standard Oil. And they found in the early 1900s that they could actually create petroleum-based drugs, pharmaceuticals from these products. And so in 1906, the FDA was established, the Food and Drug Administration. And you got Rockefeller on the heels now finding these different drugs. He pairs up with Andrew Carnegie, steel tycoon. They say, let's change healthcare. So they employed a gentleman named Abraham Flexner, and they sent him out in 1908 all the way across all of the Americas and said, I want you to go study all of the medical curriculums in all the schools across. So in 1908, he goes across to visit 155 different medical schools. And he gathers the curriculums, here's what they're teaching, here's what we need to know about it, and here's what we're gonna change. And so guess what happens? Based on the funding of John D. Rockefeller, in 1910, he publishes something, you can look this up, this is all historical fact, something called the Flexner Report. And that was a compendium of all the medical colleges and all the schools and the reform they were going to use for science-based modernization of medicine. Regardless of the last 5,000 years of evidence and data that they had, we're gonna change everything right now. And so after 1910, now it's 1911, John D. Rockefeller sends out expeditions across to say, all the medical colleges, all 155 medical schools to say, hey, I've got your funding now. He invested in the FDA, started taking things over in about 1912, 1914, started taking things over, and he now controls the funding and said, you're gonna now change your curriculums to these pharmaceuticals, these petroleum-based drugs, and drop the naturals, drop the frequencies, drop everything you've been using for thousands of years. This is the new one, or you lose funding. About 50% of all schools shut down, and that was the end of Western medicine right there. So they finally closed their doors, they gave in, half of them gave in to the finances, half of them said, up yours, we're not doing that. And so now, the Rockefellers began reforming the medical schools. They got their hands in the American Heart Association, the American Cancer Society, all these different pies with all these different diseases and said, we're changing everything. So the medical schools were conforming, they were rewriting the textbooks, rewriting what everybody needs to learn. And so this entire process of reform just happened in the last 100 years, completely shattering the last several thousand. Now don't get me wrong, there are some really amazing things that we actually get from natural healthcare. There's really amazing things we get from pharmaceutical based. If I'm in a horrible accident, I need to be anesthetized, give me the drugs. Don't put lavender oil on me, get me a surgeon. That's emergencies and surgeries. But chronic inflammatory conditions are the bulk of what the GDP or the gross domestic product. In fact, healthcare takes up 18% of the GDP of the entirety of the USA. 18% of all money made is from sickness and disease. It's worth about $4.7 trillion a year, which is a really shocking number. And so when this whole reform came through and the money started coming up, it started to form something that you guys may be very, very familiar with. I know you've gone to your doctor, you've heard this before. It's something that they call the standard of care. This is how we're going to monetize, level out, and really sort of streamline every treatment product. We get you in, we check your symptoms, we give you a diagnosis, that's your label. It's Crohn's. You have colitis, you have IBS, that's your diagnosis. Therefore, you get these drugs in this order, just like everyone else does. And that's all there is to it. And that's the standard of care. It's supposed to be for the best professional, the most accurate treatments, the best bang for the buck, so to speak. But here's what happens. I'll give you an example. I went through this myself. I had growing up really bad irritable bowel. I've dealt with 15 plus bowel movements a day. I was having 5 and 10 minute transit times. I'd eat, it'd come right out of me. My joints were a mess. My brain was a mess. ADHD through the roof. I was having panic attacks and migraines and suicidal thoughts. It was a mess. My skin, super inflamed, acne down my arms all the way to my wrists. It was up my back and neck. It was everywhere. And so I learned during this process, it's a candida infection. It was actually a fungal issue and I have parasites. Now, not only that, I tested. I got testing done and found candida on my test. I found parasites, which are very hard to do, so they're very abundant. I have all these things, plus dietary logs to say when I eat a carbs, I eat the sugars, I eat something I shouldn't, I break out within 24 to 48 hours. My candida gets worse. That's my acne, my joint pain. I have all the symptoms. I went to the dermatologist and I said, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the report. Here are my root causes. I would like some help dealing with this. Can you prescribe antifungals, antiparasitics? He says no. He says, I recognize, and he says, I'm one of the top dermatologists in the country. I do speeches and presentations on this. I hear what you're saying. I agree that acne can be fungal, but the quote, standard of care, I can give you Accutane, extremely hard on the liver. I can give you antibiotics or a topical cream. So here we are throwing a bunch of stuff at it to see what can maybe help, rather than getting to the root cause, which he is well aware of existing. He knows this is my root cause, but he's not allowed to do anything with it because the standard of care says treat the symptoms, not the root cause. And you're dealing with that right now with your doctors. They're going through the standard of care. They're giving you the drugs to mask the symptoms. And everything that you're dealing with has a root cause. It'd be no different than going for a walk barefoot, you step on a thorn and it's pierced into your foot and you go to the hospital and your doctor goes, well, it looks like that thorn is just part of your body now. It's just part of your DNA. There's nothing we can do, but here's some numbing cream for the pain. Use this for the rest of your life. When it gets infected, we'll give you antibiotics. What do they do with bowel disease? Well, you come in, you're having bowel disease. It's just part of your body. There's nothing we can do. It's part of your genetics. Here's something for the pain. You'll take it for the rest of your life. And when you get gut infections like C. diff, here's some antibiotics. It's really no different. And so we have to understand that this root cause happens. And so let's go back to the top, what's happened now with our standard of care. Let's go back to what we just talked about coming in here. Number one, we say, the Western will say, your doctor will say, IBD is autoimmune, it is genetic, and it is unknown cause or idiopathic. Well, it's not truly autoimmune, but the standard of care says to treat it like it's autoimmune. 50% or more of cases don't actually have any antibodies, but it's standard of care. So once you have the symptoms, you get diagnosed with the disease, you get these drugs anyway, no matter what. We're not going to bother testing for antibodies most of the time. Some do, some don't. But the irony is even the drugs they give you to treat your Crohn's or colitis can actually create these same antibodies. So do you have them or do you not? Why are we treating it in standard of care? The next one is it's just genetic. Well, your gut bacteria has been absolutely wrecked over the last 100 years. There's been tons of antibiotics and chemicals, 100,000 or so chemicals estimated to be added to our world in the last 100 years, most to our food supply. Artificial sweeteners and chemicals and toxins and food coloring and preserves and thickeners and emulsifiers. They're well known to be horrible for your gut and gut bacteria, which influences what? Genetic expression. And to say, again, is it autoimmune? Is your body attacking your own tissues? Or is it now attacking your mutated microbiome and your gut is simply caught in the crossfire? These are two very different ways of looking at it. The third saying it's unknown. Well, I just gave you 500 reasons why, or 100,000 reasons why this can be happening to you, even worse since the 1990s. Again, 1990, about 2 million cases globally. Right? Let's take a look at this and let's see what's happened since then. We know the chemicals, we know the foods, we know the junk. So back in 1990, we have approximately 700 to 900 different pesticides, chemicals approved for use on our food. Fast forward to 2020, in the USA, it's 18 to 20,000 different chemicals approved for use. Almost 1,000 of these are nerve agents. They disrupt your microbiome. Glyphosate, for example, Bayer bought out Monsanto's glyphosate. They recently paid out over $11 billion. That's 11 billion with a B. $11 billion in lawsuits for cancer to settle over 100,000 lawsuits for causing cancer with their glyphosate product, with 30 to 40,000 more still pending. And guess what? They're still allowed to use these drugs. So what's happening? Why is this going on? Is it really unknown, or are we turning a blind eye because the FDA, the insurance companies, the big food, big ag, they all work together. They're all in cahoots together. Could it be? Tinfoil hat moment. That's why my hairline's back here. My tinfoil hat keeps rubbing my hair off. But think about it. Look at the CEOs going from one company to another. And this is what we see on an ongoing basis. And so we have to understand that there's a lot going on in the deeper trenches of this stuff. And so if we start to look at the 3 biggest industries in the USA, we talked about it consuming 18% of the GDP, which is about $4.7 trillion a year made in sickness and disease. The 3 biggest industries in all of North America. 1, pharmaceuticals. Those are John D. Rockefeller's petroleum-based drugs. Number 2, we have health insurance. Health insurance is a major taker of industry and income, and of course your last one being hospitals and hospital care. Trillions of dollars sunk into these 3 things, making up a total of 18% of the entire US income from sickness and disease. If you're the one who founded the system, why would you drop it? A patient cured would be a customer lost. If you're the one who founded the system and got involved for the money, Martin Shkreli was known as the most hated man in America. He was Big Pharma's fall guy for a long time. He was on the news, he quoted saying, "We are not in the business of curing people, we're in the business of making money. We have a responsibility to our shareholders." And so we have to understand that unfortunately there's a lot of this being hidden, and a lot of this information I'm sharing with you, it gets what's called shadow banned. You bring it up and try to share it, and then it gets pushed down. It doesn't get deleted, it just gets hush. So the algorithm puts it way at the bottom. You gotta dig really far to find it. Sometimes you even go to my page and may not even see it. And this is what we're working with. So what I wanna talk to you about is the last piece of the puzzle, which is learning a new language. It's called symptomatology. This is the language your body speaks. It's the art of listening to your symptoms. Symptoms are not a bad thing. Symptoms are a gift from an incredibly intelligent, innate intelligence of your body to try to cry for help. We have to understand that symptoms are signs of things. Signs of what you see, symptoms what you feel. A bloating of the belly, that is a symptom because you can feel the bloat. It's also a sign because you can see the bloat, for example. Okay, so signs and symptoms. This is symptomatology. Think about this. If your digestive system has a set of vocabulary, has a set of words it can speak, it's about a little more than a dozen, maybe 15, 16 words. Whether you have a stomach flu or Crohn's and colitis, it says the exact same words. It says gas, bloat, pain, constipation, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. It might say increase or decrease appetite, blood, mucus. These are the words it can say. Whether you have a stomach flu or Crohn's and colitis, it says the same words, it just says them louder the worse the disease process is. But there are about 13,000 other symptoms outside of your gut we can look at. And this is where symptomatology comes in handy. We have to look at the rest of your body. When you eat certain foods, how do you feel? Are you prone to illnesses? Do you have allergies? Even right down to, do you get electric shocks touching carpets and doorknobs? Are you someone who grinds your teeth? Do you have thyroid issues, hormonal issues? Do you have sexual hormonal issues like PCOS? Do you have erectile dysfunction? Do you have vaginal dryness? Do you experience psoriasis, eczema, acne? Do you have joint pain? These are all symptoms we can look at that are not in your gut, a very small vocab. We can go outside of that to listen to what your body's telling us. This helps pinpoint the root cause. We have to learn to speak this new language. When you can connect the dots on symptoms, we don't even need testing most of the time because your symptoms speak louder than most tests. Prime example would be parasites. Now, the best parasite testing, on average, is about 40% accurate. So people come in and go, I got a parasite test, I don't have any. Well, you grind your teeth, you're very irritable, you've got issues digesting fatty foods, you've got a SIBO condition, you've got autoimmune diseases, you've got sinus issues, you've got psoriasis, eczema, dry skin, you've got early signs of balding, early menopause. These things can say, well, you got parasites, regardless of the fact that your test came back negative, you still got them because your symptoms, your body is telling us what we need to know. We're looking at a test and ignoring it. It's a different language, but we have to learn how to speak it. And so here's what I want to do for you. If you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, wow, nobody's told me this before, because frankly, no one has told you this before. No one has told you that your body's symptoms tell a story. Your doctor hasn't told you IBD is reversible. Your doctor's told you IBD is autoimmune. There's nothing you can do. They told you you're on these drugs for life, and this entire time you're wondering, how did I go from healthy to sick? How did my baby get sick for no reason? How come my child is ill? It's not in my family, it's not in genetics. Even if it is genetic, what might be causing our genetics to express this way? I know genetics are not doom and gloom. It's just sort of a hair trigger. So what caused something, what pulled the trigger? You're wondering, why hasn't my doctor talked about this? Well, let's go back to 1908 and figure out why they've not been taught this stuff when the curriculum changed. These are the answers that you need to know, the answers you deserve. And what we can do for you right now, if you want to comment the word, you want help right now, comment the word solution. And what I'll do is I'm going to reach out. We'll talk to you about the gut health solution. I'll have a conversation, sit down, walk through your symptoms. What's going on? What caused your disease? How did this come to be, so we can go back to the beginning and unravel this process so you can become healthy again like you deserve to. Because everyone can get better. If you were here last week, it is available on YouTube, it's available on a podcast. Larissa Tassio shared her story. Back in 2013, she was diagnosed. She had issues for many years before that, severe ulcerative colitis. She so vividly described it as having squirrels with the razor blades attached to their feet running around on her insides. Like horrific pain, debilitating. Our first call together, after she commented solution, she was on the toilet during that call. That's how severe these things can be. You don't have to live that way. She now got back 16 weeks in the program. Her colonoscopy report, near perfect. One little spot left. Her doctor says, I don't know what you're doing, but keep going. And you know what he said after that? Would you like to try some mesalamine? Still offered her more drugs, even though she dropped drugs for 16 weeks, did this and got better. Everything can be done. There is more hope, and I promise you there's so much more. If you comment the word solution, we're gonna have that conversation to see what this looks like to get you the help that you need, the help that you deserve to begin reversing this thing. There's no obligations, it's just a conversation to start that. We have all kinds of resources all across the board. We have free stuff, we got cheap stuff, we got our custom stuff, we have everything that you need. It's just you in one word, keeping you from getting healthy. Thank you so much for coming. We're gonna see you next week.